Now it's time to talk biggest risers on our top 100 list here on the call up. Of course, you got Jack McMullen and I'm Aram Layton. There's a handful of players that have climbed a good amount, but we're focusing on the players who rose the most on this list. And there's some pretty significant risers because the way I look at it, Jack, is like it's you've had a lot change, obviously, because I wanted to call it a recalibration, but I think that wouldn't be fair because also we had like 15, 20 graduations as well.
Right.
So it's a recalibration as well with a couple months to work with now, but it's also just naturally going to be a refresh as well.
100%. And I mean, you're going to have guys like the baseline understanding would be if you have 25 graduations or 25 newcomers, then you've got 25 guys rising up those
Mm-hmm.
spots. So it's like the number 60 prospect should actually rise to 35 if you have that many graduations, if they're kind of holding serve. But the way that we did it, like I think the smallest rise that we have on here is like 30,
Yeah.
30 spots. So these are guys that actually improve their stock instead of, well, everybody else graduated and then this guy held serve. So that's what we got going right now. So who are the guys that tangibly made their prospect value greater than just
100%.
normal time level, yada, yada?
And it's a great way to put it. And several of these players, I think you'll see like a future value tier uptick as well. That's
Yeah.
generally going to be the rule of thumb with these guys also. And yeah, we're going to break down why these players climb so much, and then and I think it's kind of different reasons for each of them. Some is very very related to what they've done performance wise. Others, I got so much feedback saying you got to move this guy up that I'm like, all right, I'm gonna move him up. But that was probably only one or two guys. I think you'll figure that out when we get there. But Jack, you'll walk us through it, and I think for a couple of the big risers, I think some people already know what's coming. Of course, you can follow along with the write ups in the list linked in the episode description.
Absolutely. And let's start with Mr. Max Clark. Clark, obviously, friend of the program now. Um, Max Clark was up, what, from 44 to 15? I
Yeah.
think I have that right. Yeah, 44 to 15. You talked about the ability within the strike zone. Like, he's not whiffing whatsoever right now. He's become one of the premier bat to ball guys in the minor leagues. Is that why he rose, or were there other elements to it?
Yeah, because for me, it was I always thought the idea of okay, let's wait and see, like just wait on the power. He's going to be a five tool superstar. Like, I never really subscribed to that. We talked about that. So like I thought the people that were baking in that upside of oh well he's going to hit, he's going to finally tap into plus power. That's why he's a top 10 prospect in baseball. I always thought that was a little bit unrealistic. Just given his frame, his swing path, and just the way he goes, about his ABs. And, I think the other side of it, though, and the reason why we had him ranked a little bit lower is, I mean, that was a 50, maybe 55 hit tool last year.
Right.
And like relative to his level. And then this year, it's 60, and you could dream on a little bit more hit tool wise. So it's like, I think the interesting conversation about it is nobody ever talked about Max Clark and said, just wait till he has a plus hit tool, right? Like that was never, it was always, oh, wait for this power that may never come. So now you have a hitter here that I think it fits his archetype way more to see him have this, potential plus hit tool where, and have potentially plus or better plate discipline because he's a speedster. He puts bat on ball consistently. He can spray the ball all over the yard. I think looking at a player like him and saying, oh, yeah, he's going to tap into 25 home run power. At what cost? Like he
Yeah.
has impressive bat speed, frame defying juice. He would have to sell out to do that. And as he said on the show, like he feels like he's slugging a little bit more now as he's focused on just being a hitter and naturally kind of finding those home runs. But that's going to be a guy that probably hits 10 to 15. I love that he's focused on, being an elite bat to ball guy, elite approach guy, because the defense is going to be legit in center. That the speed is going to be a huge part of his game. So I think this is the best version of Max Clark to get to, I think the most valuable version of himself and be able to consistently produce. So I just see this, high floor, still enough ceiling because he can run and do all these different things and defend. But I like this archetype, and I think this is the highest end outcome of his archetype is if he's putting bat on ball, walking at a really high clip, and there's still enough juice. It's not like he's a slap hitter. There's still enough juice to get those that slug when he needs.
Only other thing I'll add is like he can get into the juice because of what he does off field. Like he is I don't want to say like weight room legend because that's kind of reserved for guys that look like Jack Caglione, but he's a guy that like puts work in the weight room. And this is a guy that is incredibly strong rotationally and just overall. So it's like you put that much work in off field, it's going to result in 10 to 15 bombs. It's not like he's hitting 5 homers in a major league season.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing. And the thing too with him is the EVs have climbed. Like it is a hard hit rate that's now north of 40%.
You find the barrel enough at optimal angles, you're going to hit 15 homers in a season.
And he's got the approach to leverage his hitters' counts, and he's talked about it like, okay, 2-0, I think he might come into me here. That's where I'm going to try to sell out a little bit more pull side, and he's got the juice to sneak those out, and not even sneak, really hit those no doubters. But the other side of it too is you did have some graduations ahead of him in that range. Those top end guys that held serve, naturally we're going to climb a few more spots. But again, seeing that hit tool component, a 20% increase contact rate wise against secondaries is insane. That's absolutely insane. And so that was a big part of it as well. Tangible mechanical adjustment, all of those things tie in.
We're leading the league in Misiorowski shouts. Jacob Misiorowski, the Brewers starting pitching prospect. I feel like we've talked about him more than okay, so Quinn Matthews was our guy last year. I think since the beginning of the 2023 season, there's nobody that we've talked about more than Jacob Misiorowski. Do you think I'm right there?
That's it's up there. Matthews probably because of the story last year, and then I would say it's probably Misiorowski just because it's like you got to check in every time, a week thing
every time. And here's the thing: like he slid from like 30 to 82 in the preseason update. Now he's 82 to 20 because the narrative about him changes all the time. We thought he was a closer in spring training, and now he's an ace.
Yeah. And then he walked 6 again the other day.
Yeah, so now he's a closer again.
I don't know. Pitchers give me headaches. I was just talking about this with James Anderson. He was kind enough to have me on his show, and it's fascinating. The pitcher stock is a whole conversation in itself, but because the pitchers can change something so quickly, like Gage Jump. It's a guy that not only wasn't a top 100 prospect, I think some people probably didn't even have him in the top 50, 75 in their draft board in 2024 and what was viewed as a light draft. Now he's a top 60 prospect. So like pitchers can change things so quickly. But with Misiorowski, it's just you're just waiting for this one component and it's command. But when that comes along, then everything else becomes incredible, right? So it's a big variable, but it's the variable. So you had a 7-start stretch where in 37 2/3 innings, he walks 10 and strikes out 50.
You feel great.
You're going to feel really good about that. Actually, it was an 8-start stretch where he struck out 55 and walked 12. So, that was extremely encouraging. And I think as he's just continued to build on that, I think he's going to have his, rough outings here and there where he loses his zone and things get out of kilter. But like, I think you're seeing that he's going to have enough good starts that you keep this guy in the rotation, and you're just going to eat it every once in a while when when he clearly doesn't have it, and that's where you get Connor Thomas hot when he's healthy, or maybe the rotations fill it out, and that's where long man. I don't even know. Chad Patrick maybe is a long man. He's too good though. It's insulting to Chad Patrick right now. But that's probably where you get Connor Thomas hot, and you just hope that only happens every 7-8 starts.
I'm okay paletting it if it's once every 4 starts too, because what you can get the other 3 is really nice. Like think about what we saw for the first 4 years of Edward Cabrera. Like you stomach that. And Misiorowski has actually better stuff than Cabrera. Yeah. Cabrera has some of the better stuff. But like Cabrera has some of the better stuff in Major League Baseball, right? It's just a matter of reining it in. Misiorowski has better stuff than that guy. And you paleted it through the first 3 years of Cabrera because you knew that, 2 out of every 5 starts were going to be electric. And Misiorowski, if he can give you 3 out of 4, dude, I'm signing up for that.
Especially with this bullpen and how good the Brewers, they can overcome those blow up starts here or there. And then the last thing I'll mention on this, I think you bring up a great point. Is like let me just take you through the game log. And I know it's kind of lazy, but like it just supports the argument. Like
it's not lazy. It's my preferred method of analysis. So don't call it lazy again.
Okay, sorry. Like 6 innings of 1 hit, no runs, 1 walk, 8 Ks. Your team's winning that game the vast majority of the time. He faced Durham again and does it again. 5 innings, 3 hits, no runs, no walks, 9 Ks. You're going to win most of those games. Then you have like this middle ground Misiorowski, which you also were seeing a lot more of at the end of last year, points, or at the end of his starting tenure last year. And then what we've seen this year where, okay, command's not great, but he's still going to miss enough bats to where he can scatter the walks. 6 innings, 5 hits, 1 run, 4 walks, 5 Ks. Like, I think you're going to get a lot of those too. But then he followed that with 6 2/3, 1 walk, 11 Ks, no runs, 7 innings of 1 run ball. That's when he's going to be able to, like those will be like 0.5 WAR performances sometimes in one start. So that's why it's just too damn good. And then the other side of it is, I think we've seen the command get good enough to where if it didn't work as a starter for whatever reason, you put this guy as a closer, and maybe you've got some Mason Miller competition here. So like that's the other reason why the fallback is just so special as well in high leverage.
Yeah. Next guy that we're going to talk about here is Cole Young, and no, it's not just because he is a big league call up for the first time. Cole Young climbed from 69 to 27. He was one of the best hitters in AAA baseball this year. And okay, PCL, Tacoma is one of the more pitcher-friendly environments in the Pacific Coast League, and he was calling that his home ballpark. Why is Cole Young back to being a blue chip prospect?
Yeah, it was interesting because I of course looked at the numbers at first and you say, wow, okay, he's doing it in the PCL. He's a classic PCL bump guy. But I'll plug James Anderson again, who's the lead prospect analyst for RotoWire. And he was asking me about Cole Young and how much he had jumped up. And he said he was kind of making the case of why he agrees with it. And he threw out a great comp. And I don't love the comps, and I even mentioned that I'm like, I generally hate comps, James, but that was a nice one. Bryson Stott. And I can really see it here because this is the point I wanted to make with him is Cole Young can play short. And I think he can play a fine short. They don't need him to. So he's going to play second base. I think he can play a really good second base. Like we're talking about, I think top 5 in a lot of defensive matches. Maybe it doesn't happen this year, but as he gets more reps at the big league level, watching him there, it's incredibly impressive. What we've seen across Major League Baseball now is teams are valuing second base defense more than we like to think. I mean, Andres Gimenez was a contract that a major league team said, I'll take that on. And I think that's a perfect example, but you also see so many different players that have provided plenty of value with the glove first. But then you also saw the uptick in quality of contact where you had a tangible mechanical adjustment as well. He made an adjustment at the end of last year where I think it was better for his lower half, but his hands were still too low. So then he was kind of getting beat on the top with four seamers. So he got his hands a bit higher and he found this middle ground, I think, across these changes to where now he's handling the four seamers better. He's still leaning into those adjustments he made at the end of last year that helped him, I think much more with the lower half and perform more consistently. And then you saw that this year, as you alluded to, the PCL bump, but his EVs jumped. I mean, his hard hit rate was up over 44%, which, I mean, if you look at where he was at last year, I want to say, I think he was at 33%. So that's a significant shift. And the PCL ain't helping you with that. The swing decisions have always been good. The bat to ball got better as well. And that's something that he needs. So seeing him improve in the bat to ball department, I think put together the best contact rates he has since the lower levels. The swing decisions have continuously been fantastic. The glove looks like it can be usable at short and elite potentially at second base, and he's hitting the ball harder than ever. It's just such a high floor that's really what catapulted him up.
I love it. So Andres Gimenez, that's the comp.
Bryson Stott.
Bryson Stott. Is Stott like Gimenez was an $100 million player? Like Stott is what? He hits the open market in 2 years. Is he a $60 million player?
Probably.
I would think so. I would think Nico Horner is the price point there.
And Horner's probably a little bit better, right?
You think so? I think Stott's at that level.
Is he?
But I love him. I've got a lot of bias.
I like Horner a little bit more. I think Stott, you have a little bit more pop potential there too. But yeah, I think it's a pretty fair price point.
Cool. Younger guy is up because of a strong showing in low A to this point. Bryce Rainer of the Detroit Tigers is up from 63 to 31. Connor Griffin is a top 20 prospect in baseball, but Rainer jumped a lot. He's behind Griffin right now. Number one, why is he behind Griffin? Number two, why did he jump this much?
Well, I'll preface with it sucks. I'm pretty sure he's hurt now. The tragic dive back into first base is so risky. Uh,
Dude.
and
So many guys, like every single year, do the pickoff. Like they get hurt on that pickoff, and it's a shoulder or a
It's a
wrist,
shoulder.
whatever it
I
is.
saw it immediately, dude, and like, I'm like, that's a dislocated shoulder. So I don't know if they've just like, I don't know if they've said what it is yet, because it was like yesterday as we're recording this. But
Yeah.
I don't like to do the pro football doc thing, but like that looks like a dislocated shoulder, which absolutely stinks, because I'll lay out why he climbs so much and why he's so excited. This power is insane for a 19-year-old, and when I was looking I went back on the draft report just to see, like, maybe how much, because you can adjust so much from 3 months in on. And that's another reason why you get some big risers, is like, we had some prep guys that you were barely able to see much of. And then you get 50 games or 40 games of pro ball, and it's more than you would get from their entire high school season, and on top of the data and more challenging competition and video and things like that. But with Rainer, I had plus power potential in the write-up, but I didn't think he'd get there now. And I know it's not plus game power, but it's plus raw power. Like, you look at the EVs that he was putting up already. He was hitting the ball harder than Connor Griffin, I think. Overall, it's like marginally. They're both right in the same department there. But you had a 111 mile per hour, like, laser beam to dead center the other day. He had another 111 mile per hour home run. I think he popped a 114 at one point. I think you have 5 batted balls north of 110 in 35 games for a 19-year-old just getting his feet wet in full season ball. A hard hit rate of 54%. And I think there's some moving parts to his swing and some things that he'll need to clean up, and there's some swing and miss. But it wasn't egregious by any means. Like, 75% in zone contact rate for a power over hit high school kid is not necessarily incredibly concerning to me. And the out of zone contact rate was above average, which tells me there's some hand-eye there. There's some adjustability. So, like, this is a guy that I do think can get the hit tool to a good enough point where he can get into that power. And what's crazy is he's 6'3", 195. There could be more power in there. So, of course, now you take the detour with the shoulder, and that's what really sucks. And hopefully it's not as serious as it looked. But, I think that was the big thing with Rainer's. I think there's a chance he could move off of short. That was the one thing that was a little bit lesser than I thought, but I still think he's got a lot of time to learn how to play the position. Again, stinks to have this detour here, but in the idea that if he did move to third, it's a plus arm. The power will more than play there, and so that's where it was another side of it for me, where it's like, even if this guy was a third base prospect, he's still a top 50 prospect for me. So that's why I was really excited about it too. So the power is probably the predominant,
Gotcha.
the catalyst there, but then a 20% chase too. So it's been really fun watching him do his thing, and again, hopefully a speedy recovery for him, because especially at shortstop, I'd love to see him just get more reps there and get more comfortable.
I feel like we're saying speedy recovery about this guy a lot. Chase DeLauter of the Cleveland Guardians, when he's on the field, he's one of the best prospects in baseball. But DeLauter has been off the field for the overwhelming majority of his minor league career. But DeLauter was up from 59 to 33. Why?
Healthy. Like, he's on the field. As long as this guy's on the field, he's a top 40 prospect. I don't, even with the injury history, whatever it may be, whenever he is on the field, I'm going to rank him in the top 40. And so he was on the field. He just got back. I understand that there's this injury concern, and if it weren't for the injury concern, if it weren't for the injury stuff, he'd be in the big leagues, and he probably would have exceeded rookie limits by now. 2, if it weren't for the injury concern, he'd probably be a top 15 prospect. So it's really tough to rank a player like this, and the reason why he moves up again is just availability. And like, in his few games back, I know he's not lighting it up offensively, but he looks like the same guy. He's controlling his AB so well. He's still finding barrels and hitting the ball really hard. He hit a 113 mile per hour home run already the other day. Like, it's so impressive what he's able to do. And I think now maybe moving him out of, not even mixing him into center, like, it should just be right field DH. And I think a lot more DH, just to until he gets his feet back under him. But the bat is just too good. The contact rates and everything, like, with the power, as long as he's on the field, Again, top 40 guy.
Cool. Yeah. I mean, dude, like he's as frustrating to me as
Ugh.
anybody in minor league baseball. And it's not fun talking about that because he rose 30 spots, right? But like, it's so frustrating to me because if this guy is in the lineup, I think he's an all-star caliber bat
Oh
for the
yeah.
Guardians. And he also is exactly what that organization needs and what they
Mhm.
need this year, what they needed at the end of last year, too. So I was just watching like their postseason run, and I'm saying there's no juice outside of Jose Ramirez. Like DeLauter's going to help, right? Manzardo, you're kind of seeing it break through a little bit. That's even being nice, I think. But I mean, DeLauter, like that is such a needed element to that lineup, and it frustrates me because this guy, if he's on the field, he's going to give you that needed element. Somebody that I know you absolutely love is Travis Sykora of
Mhm.
the Washington Nationals. Sykora was amazing last year in low A. He had a mild labrum tear in his hip. So he came back, and this guy has been amazing so far.
We might have to be eating our words. It may have been somehow mild because it was a pretty quick turnaround for
It
a
was a
labor
really quick turnaround. Maybe
for
Mike Rizzo was based for
yeah,
that.
yeah.
Yeah.
Mike Rizzo knows way more about medicals than I think we do because that was a pretty quick turnaround on a hip surgery. But I've never really seen that. But that's a big part of it too. He's healthy because preseason that injury came out before the season started, and this is a guy that had only thrown at low A by design, but had only thrown at low A and then had hip surgery. And again, I understand that Rizzo called it minor, but like I wanted to see that guy back on the mound before we pushed him up as aggressive as I wanted to push him up because stuff wise he's outrageous. And then we already got to see now, as we did this update, it's not a huge sample, but we got two high A starts there where okay, he he's really looking like the same guy even in high A. So that was a big part of it, but I think mostly just getting healthy and then getting a couple high A starts where you see the velocity right where it was at, the command right where it was at. It was more of just kind of a holding pattern with the injury because I just wasn't sure, how serious it was going to be and how he would come back from it. And now just seeing where he's at, like he was a guy that was primed to climb pretty significantly going into the season had he not gone down with the injury because you have potential for 3+ pitches here, good command and some deception in there as well.
A lot of deception.
A lot of
And
deception.
it's fun to just see Sykora and Susana both as top 40 prospects in all of baseball right now.
Yep.
The Nats have something going, and we've long looked at the Nats as being somewhat archaic when it comes to pitching development. Hitters like they've just kind of run into success, and obviously the Soto trade was huge there, but Gore was already big league ready. Abrams, you were kind of done with the development.
Yeah.
Wood didn't really need development because he was an alien life form. So it's like, okay, you got the Soto trade, you've paid enough good guys, and then somehow Luis Garcia worked out. And then
Yeah.
Keibert Ruiz is like third among NL catchers in hits right
Which is
now, which is
crazy.
nuts. I don't know how that works, but it seems like they have. Have they backed into a couple of good pitchers? Do you feel like there's been some development here to be had with a guy like Susana and Sykora?
I think even in the times just perusing through the backfields there, like you've seen a shift, I think, a little bit organizationally and how they're going about their business within the last couple of years as well. So I think you got to give them credit for that. I think you got to give them credit for the way that they've drafted as well. Like,
Hmm.
over the last couple of years, it's been a little bit better. I know people can say, well, they took Seaver King over Rainer and some of these. Yeah, but I like the approach that they've had a little bit more. I think it's been spraying the board. And Sykora was a great pick, but I think it has gotten better developmentally. I think you look even at like a Mitchell Parker, who's maybe not a guy that you develop a ton, but it's a guy that you do need to tweak and play around with things a little bit to help optimize things. James Wood, like I don't think that they made that significant mechanical. I think he found that maybe in a third party or on his own, but they let him get to where he is now. Like they didn't get in his way. And I know that sounds like a low bar, but there's a lot of teams out there that have been archaic, Rockies, that get in their players' way. Like they actually make it worse. So
Yeah.
I think there's been a lot of just aspects of that where they've definitely improved in that regard. And I think when you see some of the guys making the leap at the big league level, I think there's clearly something going on there that is a little bit different. That or they hit an unbelievable parlay of players, working out offensively. Because I will say, people say, well, what about Dylan Cruz? That might be the next player to monitor and see if can they get him right offensively when he's fully healthy as well.
Got you. All right, we are gonna get into another guy in the NL East, Carson Benge, in a moment. Before that, quick break.
If you're into sports cards, Loop is the app that you've been waiting for. No mystery sellers streaming breaks from their bedrooms. Loop connects you to trusted, real-world card shops that actually care about the hobby. Loop exclusively partners with real vetted brick and mortar card shops or individual breakers who are doing serious volume and meet high quality standards. These aren't hobbyists in their garage, these are licensed businesses that rely on their reputation, meaning your cards are in good hands. You'll never have to worry about tampered packs or cards going missing again. What you see is what you get. Loop is a one-stop shop for collectors, whether you're joining a live break, buying personals, or snagging a rare single from the marketplace as well. All sellers are verified, so you don't have to dig through sketchy eBay listings or wait on slow shipping. The marketplace is fast and simple. No auctions, no haggling, just clean listings and a few taps to check out. I've been going through there a lot to pick up some of the Luis Pena cards that I've been trying to grab, some Kevin McGonagall's, and I'm always checking out the Loop Marketplace to try to grab some of those cards. One of the coolest things about Loop is the social element as well. You're not just buying, you're part of a live interactive stream. And we're going to be doing an interactive stream with Hit Seekers, who's on the Loop platform, one of my favorite card shops out there in Fort Mitchell, Kentucky, not too far away from the Cincinnati Red Stadium. And had so much fun when I went there in person, but we'll be doing a live stream with them. So stay tuned with that on Loop, of course, as well. But it's the closest thing to being in a card shop or at a card show, all from your phone. I love to do it when I'm sitting in my living room. Maybe the baseball games are a little bit slow that day. I want to chase some cards, and I'm getting somebody to rip open 2025 Bowman baseball for me, and we have some fun. We talk about it. They ask who I'm looking for, and they're rooting you on. So it really is a fun experience and environment. They also educate me on the product while they're opening it. Maybe there's some variations I'm not familiar with or some questions I have, and it's really fun to be able to have that information side of things as well. And Loop is offering our listeners a special offer. If you go to loop.cards/callup, that's LOUPE.cards/CALLUP, you'll get $10 in credit on your first purchase, $50 and over. So that can go towards breaks. That could go towards picking up an individual card. That's LOUPE.cards/callup for that $10 credit on your first purchase, $50 or more. Terms and conditions apply.
Benge, another guy I know that you've been high on since the draft. Benge made the preseason top 100 list right at 100. He is up 60 spots to 40. You're impressed by what you've seen so far in full season ball, huh?
What makes you say that?
Because he's up 60 spots.
Dude, it's funny because I think so. We have an awesome. We have a bunch of amazing people in the Discord, but I'm assuming that this guy, he goes by Toast on there. I'm assuming he's a Mets fan because it's Bartolo Mets, but maybe he's not. And he's like, Carson Benge has become overrated. And we got into this conversation a little. It was a great conversation about air pull and how important that is. And I was kind of making the point that it can be really important for guys like a Pete Crow Armstrong, where you're not making contact frequently enough. So you're going to need to get a lot of quality out of the contact that you're making. Or an Isaac Paredes, where you make a lot of contact, but the quality is not great from an exit velocity standpoint. So you need to have the optimal angles. I think those are examples where air pull can help center a hitter a little bit more production wise. That's on a far end of the spectrum either way. Right. And I think it's a way to get more out of your batted ball, whether it's and kind of hedge a deficiency. But when you have a Carson Benge skill set, and it's like the James Wood conversation, and James Wood's, all the sliders turned up to 1,000,000. But like a James Wood doesn't need to pull the ball consistently because he's quick enough and able to do it when he needs to, but he can go backside or dead center or whatever. Benge is not that, but he does have it is a similar conversation in terms of I don't think Benge needs to pull the ball in the air that much because we're seeing the bat to ball be as advertised. It was 90+ in zone contact in college. It's 88% in high A, right? Like they went easy with him in low A. He did great there, but now it's high A, right? And he is putting up the same contact rates. The swing decisions are good. So that's another guy that it's like, okay, when he needs to pull the ball, he's going to put himself in a position where, okay, I'll get the head out here, and that's where he'll pull it. Or a hanger, he's quick enough to pull it. The biggest aspect of this, and this is the most important thing to me, is just the raw EVs. Because if you have a 90th percentile of 106 miles per hour, which is where Benge is at now, which is crazy. That's, again, major league average is like 103.5. You can hit a line drive backside and it's going to leave the yard. You can leave the yard to dead center. even if the ground ball rate's a little bit inflated, when he hits it in the air, it's going to have a good chance of leaving the yard. The other side of it is, if the ground ball rate's a little bit inflated, he's an above average runner with high EVs. He's going to be a sustainably high BABIP guy. So those are all the things I really like. And then it's the conversation of, what do we say about him out of the draft? Let's see what happens when he's no longer pitching. This guy was a legit pitching prospect. If you look at the end of his collegiate career, he was one of the key arms for Oklahoma State. Like, he was important for them. Now that he's able to focus on his body as a hitter and bulk up, we were talking about Cags. He was always huge, but now he's mega huge because he's not pitching anymore. Benge has already added some strength, clearly, for that 90th percentile and hard hit rate to jump the way that it has, 44% hard hit rate. And I think there's room for even more. On top of all that, he can play center field. I think this is a guy that is going to be consensus top 50 by the end of the year.
Cool. Man. And what does he need to do to, I guess, like, get to consensus top 50? Is it just keep on doing what you're doing, pal? Or is it like show another max EV, things like that?
I think a max EV heard around the world would help a little bit, as it always does. But I think as people start to see the data, like, it'll get democratized a little bit, like Mets, all these teams that have these accounts, right? It's like Mets player development or whatever. They'll put out something about, his data and how hard he's hitting the ball, and people are going to say, whoa. But I think that the obvious answer is doing it at double. And I think everything across the board, because college guys, like, you get excited about good performance in high A, but it's kind of, hey, you're a college guy, let's see you do it in double.
Yeah.
The data across the board to me says he's going to be able to do it in double. And if he does, I think we see him fly across, the industry.
Got you. Okay. We have an Oakland A, or I guess just an A. Luis Morales, the right-handed pitcher. Morales jumps from 72 to 49. Why?
Command is looking as good as ever. And it's crazy because he still has room to improve this. But this has long been one of my, favorite pitching prospects in terms of, relative to probably everybody else. And it's just the delivery, like the arm swing is a little bit long. We've talked about that. It seems like it can be maybe a bit difficult to sync up consistently, but it seems like even when the strike rate's at 60%, he misses so many barrels with what could be 3 above average pitches. I think 2+, and you can make a case for a 3rd+, that he can just pitch his way out of jams whenever. And so you just start to think, okay, what if this 22-year-old can find a little bit more consistency with the delivery? Through the first, handful of starts this year, it felt like he had, and then the last couple, it hasn't been as sharp, but he's been doing it in double A this year. Like, he was dynamite, and they brought him up to triple, and first start in triple was 6 no-hit innings to 7 Ks. Wow. He hit a bit of a wall in the second one and then bounced back in the third. But the fact that a kid with some command, it's kind of like the John Stinson Garcia conversation, where it's like, okay, I could see him hitting a wall in AAA, even though he's a pitcher and we're talking about a hitter. Like, I could see him with Garcia. I thought aggressive approach and may do him in AAA, and it didn't. And I think with Morales, I was like, okay, tendency to spray may do him in AAA, and it didn't so far, and it hasn't, or even in AA, you could say. So that's what I'm really encouraged by, making that jump. He hadn't pitched above high A last year, but I still think there's a little bit more that needs to come together command wise. But you have a potential for a really impressive 4-pitch mix here, and a fastball that averages 96.5.
More buzzy name is Arjun Nimmala of the Toronto Blue Jays. And Nimmala, we've talked about over the last few episodes. And this guy, it's a loaded conversation because he ended up on the development list at this point last year because he was punching out all the time and he looked young, but you loved him out of the draft. And now he's tearing up high A. The home run leaders in high A like a week ago were Arjun Nimmala and Lazaro Montes, and those guys could not look any different. Arjun Nimmala jumps from 92 to 50. Is it because of the juice or because of something else?
It's a little of everything, right? The juice for sure. But we had I think that was an expectation, right? Wiry, explosive 18/19-year-old was going to get into more power. But it's like, was he going to be able to get into that power enough? Would he hit the ball enough to be able to do that? That was the question. And seeing him improve the bat to ball and the approach enough to then simultaneously enjoy that uptick in power. So you're seeing him see that uptick that we were expecting, and then have the hit tool improvements to get into that uptick in power more consistently, I think is so encouraging. And, it's one thing to come off the development list and improve at the level that you were playing at before, but it's another thing to come off the development list, improve at the level you were already playing at, and then continue those adjustments and maintain those improvements at high A the next year. So I think that was a big thing too, where it's like sometimes guys will find it for a little bit, get in rhythm, and then they lose it and can't really get back to it. And especially if you go to a new level after an offseason and everything like that, it seemed like he took those changes, really hammered them home through the offseason, and has them, applied even better than ever at the more challenging level that he's ever played at. So seeing that strikeout rate at 18% is just so encouraging, especially when he's putting up a 46% hard hit rate. And remember, this is a guy that can play a good shortstop.
Guy in the Milwaukee Brewers system who has been an incredibly buzzy name. And it's not like you were a late mover. It's just, I think you weren't really understanding why he was getting so much buzz.
I still don't totally.
Okay, so Cooper Pratt entered at 98. Pratt was at 98 on your top 100 at the beginning of the year. Now he's at 52. What are you resistant about if you still don't totally why you understand why he gets that much buzz?
This is the player where it was like too many people I respect. Like,
so you got bullied into 52 is what you're saying.
Yeah, I can't fully deny that.
Yeah.
And I think at 52, we are still the lowest in the industry. I don't.
That's
it's
crazy.
incredible. It's incredible. People love him. And on top of that, and I promise it had nothing to do with the Brenton Del Chiaro interview. He was already in that range. Brenton said he thinks he's an all-star. So like it's amazing. Like I don't know what I'm missing here. I see a good player. And you and I at the Futures game, 2 years ago? Came away. I remember saying that Cooper Pratt, he's just a ball player. Like he might just have that edge to him where it's just like you watch him and it always seems like he did a little bit better than he did. But when you look at the, just the batted ball data and everything, it's the same conversation that we've continued to have where it's like, okay, it's a sum of the parts kind of guy, right? Like he's going to play shortstop and stick there. That's a big part of it. The bat to ball is above average. The power is burgeoning, but you can see more because he's 6'3", 195 with room for more. But he's chasing at a 33% clip. I understand it's a tough assignment in Double-A, but I think there's a lot of projection and floor built into this guy at the same time. So it's really difficult for me. But again, this was one where just so much feedback for me was like, you got it. I think he's a top 30 prospect. And I'm like, I ain't doing that. But yeah, it's where I can't make it so much about myself where it's like, I want this to be a tool for people to know, like also generally, what a lot of people.
Here's where people are valued. Yeah.
Yeah. And like, I can't make it so about myself that it's like, okay, teams, if there was a trade going on, would value Cooper Pratt like this, but I don't. Like, there's certain players where it's like, I really don't see it. We talked about like Christian Campbell, and it wasn't, I don't see it as a player. I don't see it as a top 5 prospect. I see it as a number 30 prospect. And I think it's a similar thing with Pratt, where like, I personally see it as a back end top 100 guy, but the amount of feedback that I've gotten, it's a lot easier to push a guy from 75, 80 to 50 something on that feedback than like 30 something to 10. And the thing with Christian Campbell was, I think there was I wouldn't say silent majority, obviously, because the vast majority of people were still saying this guy's a top 5 prospect.
Yeah.
But there was a silent collection of people that said, I don't really see it, but I'm afraid to say it. And that was enough for me too. Pratt, I haven't heard one person say I don't see it. So that's a big part of it. But I will say he has all the intangibles in the way that he goes about the game. And we talk about like the 50s across the board guy. Yeah. Like he's such a good shot at being that I think that's one where it's like the traditional scouting side. I think you can actually weigh that a little bit more. Look at this kid at 20 years old and say, he's going to be a big leaguer. And, maybe the best version of that comes in year 2 or 3 at the big league level, but he's going to be a big leaguer, and it's hard to argue against that.
You got to start making it more about you, man. Put Brian Rocchio at 6. Come on. Moises Ballesteros of the Chicago Cubs is a big climber as well. Ballesteros goes from 80 to 55. Ballesteros was off to an amazing start in AAA. He gets up to the big leagues, and Looked a little overmatched, which was crazy to me because we talked about that. Like, that was not a guy that I had on my bingo card being overmatched by major league pitching. He's such a pure hitter,
Yeah.
but it just didn't go well. Was he going to be higher before that big league stint?
No, I don't think so. It's funny because it was so short for him, and I feel like that's a guy that, um, who's like the guy. There's a guy on social media that is like, is it like Lethal Shooter or something like that, where he was just like, "Oh, I see, I understand it now," and then he drills the shot. Have you seen that?
I know who Lethal Shooter is. He's the one that like will put spikes on the rim and it's like I'm so nasty and he'll just
Yeah, I
shoot
don't
like
like
10
that. He just
threes.
wastes so many basketballs. But I think it's that guy. There might be somebody else on social media, but like he'll miss like a trick shot or whatever, and then he'll say, like, "Oh, I understand it now," and then he'll
And
drill
then
the
he'll
next
drill
one.
it.
That's kind of Ballesteros to me because there's so many moving parts and he's so rhythmic, but he's always made it work. But I
Yeah.
think there's like a recalibration that has to happen sometimes, especially when you can get thrown out of timing a bit more at the big league level. And I feel like with him, that's that's a guy that okay, he had what 10 plate appearances before that game where he had 2 knocks against the Fish. And I think I felt like it was like that was his "oh, I understand it now" moment.
Yeah.
And I felt like he was going to settle in a little bit more. Something interesting. First time Ballesteros has played first base this year was last night. Last night. It would be interesting.
How do you feel about that?
I don't know. I'm gonna go see if any throws were sailed a little high and how he handled them. But
I want
I
to.
look if they want to do it, hell yeah. I mean, but again, you have Michael Bush. I don't understand how that all works. But if it's a way to fit him in the lineup, hell yeah. I don't care about first base defense. I want to see this guy in the show. So,
Yeah.
but from a actual like analysis perspective, I think it would be detrimental over time. Like,
Got it.
and I don't know if we have the analytics to measure like how many balls he would scoop out, how many maybe high throws that he would have potentially been able to snag. It's not just the high throws, it's the throws up the line, it's the throws like those are the things that would accumulate over time
Yeah.
for sure. But you also have an infield here that I mean they may just hit him in the chest every time. So that was what I was thinking about, especially with Matt Shaw's improvement. They're like, we'll just put it right in his chest every single time. Dansby right in the chest, Horner right in the chest. I mean, Matt Shaw's been phenomenal defensively, but
He's been great.
to answer the question, I've this is the bat has just gotten so good to the point where it's like, okay, I can see the DH him being a DH that can get to 3 WAR off the bat.
Yeah.
It would be hard, but like I could see it. And then the other side of it is, can he catch a couple times per week? So a little bit more skeptical of that in the past. His receiving is starting to grade out a lot better. I,
Cool.
I don't think he's going to throw guys out very well, but we're, we're talking about a guy that if he can receive well, I think in aggregate, he could be a 35, borderline 40 grade catcher. If he's doing that twice a week with elite offense, I think that works. And he could get himself to being a really good receiver by 23. And maybe that gets him to 35 grade defense, 40. And that's probably enough to catch a couple times a week in DH. So that's what kind of bumped him up enough.
True catcher. Cooper Ingle of the Cleveland Guardians. Ingle is up a lot. Cooper Ingle went from 97 to 56. It might be as simple as this guy's doing it again. Right now, through 47 games with Double A Akron, and he finished last year with Double A. He had a 794 OPS. He's gotten to that high A level of proficiency that he was at last year, this year at the Double A level. 47 games, hitting 292, 404 on base, slugging over 500. It's a 907 OPS, 18 doubles already, 6 homers. He's driven in 32, and he's keeping the K rate in check while walking. Like he's a flawless bat.
And he's a catcher. Why is this guy not a consensus top 100 prospect? Is there anything you don't like?
No.
So this is a sum of the parts guy, right? And the defense is pretty good too. Like you look at what he's able to do defensively. I don't think it's going to be, I don't think it's going to be one of the more elite catchers or anything like that. But I think it's potentially 50 grade. And if he's a 50 grade catcher with his offensive ability, I mean, that's a really well-rounded player. And not only that, he shook off a slow start as he got adjusted to Double A. His last 35 games at Double A, he's hitting 331, 457, 562. That's a 1019 OPS with more walks than strikeouts. He's got some sneaky pop. I don't think it's going to be anything crazy. It's more of a swing that's geared for line drives, but he hits the ball hard. in that span of 46% hard hit rate. The contact rates dating back to last year have been fringe plus. The chase rates are, are right around 20%, and he hits the ball in the air consistently. So you have a guy, this is like a 50. I think the hit tool is 55, but this kind of 50s across the board. I think the power might be a little bit more in like the 40 to 45 range, but then the hit tool compensates, but then defense, speed, like everything else is just average or above average across the board. And I think there is room for a little bit more juice here. I think Ingle is one of the more underrated prospects in Major League Baseball.
Wow. Yeah, I agree. I also agree about this guy, Brody Hopkins of the Tampa Bay Rays. That's my dude, man. I mean, like, I'm so fired up about him and just what he's doing for Tampa right now. Brody Hopkins this year, 11 starts, 54 innings at a 3.3 ERA. The walk number is elevated, but he's still punching 11 hitters per nine. It's a bowling ball, man. I love watching him pitch.
You know how mad I was when, because Hopkins was a player where he was definitely in the top 100 going into the year, as you were a big advocate and pushed for it. But he was a guy that I was like, I honestly could have, maybe definitely is a strong word. Like if I get enough feedback that's like, I know he's an athlete, but maybe he doesn't throw enough strikes, I would have given you a call and said, sorry, Brody just got kicked. But the feedback I kept getting, it sounded like you paid people off. Like everyone was so excited about what could be. And, there's certain players where I pick my spots and who I talk to, and these are the pitching minds. I'm calling like, what do you think? People love this guy, man. Yeah. And I always circle it back to this. Think about the two organizations that took a long look at him. The Mariners, and I'm sure they loved where he was at, but you're not going to let him, where he was at in his development in low A, stop you from getting Randy Arozarena. You're not.
Dude, I mean, the report from Seattle was they were really upset that he had to be part of that.
And I think I would still do it now because they needed Randy Arozarena. Where would this team be? He's been great this year, right? Yeah. But yeah, I understand that report now. And the command, like, it went from non-existent in college to a little bit better in his first pro season. I would say actually a lot of it better in his first pro season. And then what you saw just progressively last year and just getting to a better spot. And then this year, like, I know the walk rates are somewhat similar, but if you just watch the starts, he's there's way more consistently competitive pitches.
Yeah.
And this was his first or second outing of his professional career where he has gone 6+ innings of no walks the other day against Biloxi. And that's on the heels of another 5-inning 2-walk outing. There's been a lot of 3-walk outings this year, but not one more than 3. So the first start of the year, he walked 5. And then since then, he has not walked more than 3. This is a guy that can get away with 3 walks every start.
Of course, no, I think the strike rate across every pitch is up this year.
Yeah, it definitely is. It definitely is, especially with his breaking balls. So I think that's really encouraging. It's a 63% strike rate. You want to see it be at like 65. But this guy, if he can maintain 63% at the highest level, it will be frustrating at times. It'll be a little bit of the Misiorowski conversation, but he would survive. The thing is you look at his last 4 starts at 64%. Like every percent with this guy is going to make a huge difference because the fastball's plus, that cutter thing is disgusting at 92. Yeah. The changeup could be plus. The breaking balls could it could be like plus across the board. It could be one of the more electrifying arsenals. So the fact that he's anywhere around the zone, I think is enough for me.
Jefferson Rojas of the Cubs is the second to last guy that we're going to talk about here. Rojas up from 90 to 67. It's a 23-spot climb. Again, there were about 25 graduations. Was this as simple as him holding serve?
This was as simple as him bouncing back, I think, to what we thought he could be this year. Because, and holding serve helps a little bit too. But remember, there was a mailbag that we did, and it was, a great question was like, who are your bounce back candidates for this year? In the prospect world, and Rojas was one of our favorite picks because you looked last year to 89% in zone contact rate and decent batted ball data, and you're like, okay, he shouldn't have been this bad. But then you remember he's a 19-year-old last year at high A, so he repeats the level this year, but he's still young for the level, and he looks like the Jefferson Rojas that we had expected last year. 293, 384, 470 slash line. I mean, you're seeing the batted ball quality improve. You're seeing him, more consistently get the ball in the air. He's pulling the ball in the air with a little bit more authority. And this is a guy that I think could benefit from that, right? Because the EVs aren't great, but they're okay. I think slightly above average. that's a guy that if he pulls the ball in the air a little bit more can tap into a bit more juice. So just seeing that side of it, I think he's getting the legs a little bit more involved in his game, stealing some more bags. He just looks like a much more well-rounded player. And he's been off to a great start this year.
Perfect. And last but not least, Mr. Charlee Soto, the Minnesota Twins. We've talked about him pretty much as much as anybody in minor league baseball right now, but he's from 99 to 69.
I mean, it's as simple as fastball ticks up, 2 ticks, and we'll see if he can hold it now after the minor triceps injury. But fastball up a tick or two. And then we talked about like how before it was kind of like the fastball shapes were like 14 and 8, and then like 10 and 14. So he had a sinker and a four-seamer, but they were both a little too close to each other on the scatter plot. Now he's got this definitive four-seam fastball with carry, which I'm like, whoa, for him to find that, in one offseason is really impressive while gaining velocity. And then he still has that sinker that now looks a lot more like a sinker, and killed a little bit of vert on that. The slider is significantly improved this year as well. And that's a pitch that looks like it can be above average. And then the changeup, like I said, last year, it was one of the more impressive changeups at the lower levels. So the uptick in fastball velocity, just looking at a player here that this is a narrative aspect too, right? Where late bloomer in terms of not even late bloomer, late transition to the mound. He was a shortstop. And his first pro year, you saw like he threw like a shortstop on the mound.
100%. Like, and it didn't work.
No. And what's crazy is that like he still got outs. Like he was good enough, but if it didn't work enough to be a top 100 prospect or to be a guy that like you were expecting as one of the top prep arms in the class. Finished the year pretty well, and then I think really found something in the offseason for the uptick, the vert that he gained, the improved slider, and then you're going to always have that changeup in your back pocket. Assuming he comes back healthy, I think Soto is another guy that will be consensus top 100 by mid-season. Might be too quick depending on how much time he misses, but by the end of the season for sure.
Love it. Those are our biggest risers.
Reminder, answering questions on the top 100 all week and into next week and all the time anyways, in the Discord. Would love to have you in there. We got a special deal for the rest of the season, $35 for the rest of the season. It was $10 a month to start. We've had a lot of people piling in and jumping on that deal, so that's been awesome. We're doing a bunch of giveaways there too, to celebrate the top 100. Remember, we've got the draft coming up. Tyler Jennings and Jared Perkins, we just put out our top 300 draft prospects. So they're talking about that. Like, if you want to know who your team should be drafting, all that good stuff, like we're sending those guys everywhere. Tyler was at the Jared was at the SEC tournament. Tyler was at the ACC tournament. They're bouncing around. They're going to high school invitational. It's like they're getting live looks at all these guys. So if you're a fan of a team that's drafting high and you want to know what's going on, we have a Discord.
Those are the guys.
That we got fantasy, all that good stuff. So we'd love to have you in there, especially as the draft approaches, trade deadline season, and we got the best deal that we're going to have all year, the rest of the way. So it's been really fun in there. But again, thank you so much for listening. Would love to have you in that Discord. If you could leave a rating, review, help us grow the show, that would be awesome. And we will probably do a mailbag next week, a top 100 mailbag to wrap up the top 100 content. So looking forward to that. It'll be split with Discord questions, but keep an eye out for social media as well. But if you want to have a higher chance of getting that question in there, also join the Discord. But look forward to talking prospects with you then.